obviously male reproductive system. And both male and female reproductive systems, we're going to kind of classify or categorize the structures into one of three categories. So you have organs or structures that generate gametes. And gametes, for those of you who aren't familiar with them, or it's been a while since general bio, gametes are sex cells. Ladies, eggs; gentlemen, sperm cells. Those are the cells that create a new human being. Those are known as your gametes. Well, those gametes come from some structure. Okay, so there's either structures that generate the gametes, structures that transport the gametes, or facilitate reproduction, and that's development and growth of a new human being. So with those three things in mind, we'll start here with the female reproductive system. Make sure I can see. There we go. Okay, and yes, you can also divide it into internal and external genitalia. So external genitalia is outside the body. Internal is obviously internal. We'll just kind of stick to that three-category process, though, and we'll look at the structures as we go along. So starting with the female reproductive system, the structure that generates gametes is the ovary, right? So hopefully that's not news to any of us. Okay, and the ovaries indicated here. So it's a little, I can't really turn it.
The red thing?
No, not the red thing. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So I'm going to take this half of the model off, kind of show you. It's right here. That's the ovary. Okay. So this is the one and only structure that will generate gametes in the female reproductive system. And ovary. This red thing, as Juliet had mentioned, this is part of the gamete transporting system, and this is the very beginning of it. Here, if we look at it in this view, you can see the ovary is here, and you see this part kind of hangs over the ovary, kind of drapes over it. This part right here, these are known as fimbriae. And fimbriae are fingers, literally are fingers that hang over the ovary, and when the oocyte, the egg, is ejected, is ruptured out of the ovary, that's what happens. It's kind of floating in interstitial space for a very brief moment in time. Okay, and these fimbriae, they help sweep up, literally collect that oocyte and direct it into this tube. So it prevents it from being lost in interstitial space, so to speak. So these are the fimbriae, and they're connected to this tube. This whole tube goes by many names. I don't really care which one you pick. Just don't mix them up. Uterine tube is usually the easiest one. Fallopian tube. Okay. Oviduct. Those are the three names that this one structure can go by. Again, I don't have my lab manual in front of me. Okay, it has all three of them in there? Okay. So like I said, you can pick one. Doesn't make a difference to me. And they're all pretty straightforward. Uterine tube, fallopian tube, and most of us know where that is. So oviduct might not be too familiar, but that's what it's for. It's a duct for the ovum or the oocyte, or for ovulation, if you want to cue in on it that way. And that is connected to this structure here. Kind of go back to anatomical or lateral view here. This is the uterus. Put that back together. This whole thing up here is the uterus. It's a large, pear-shaped organ. Okay. And that's going to be mainly concerned with the reproductive development of a new fetus, a new baby. So Let me see. And then I guess we'll take a look inside. So now if we look at a medial view, zoom in. And you see the ovary, fimbriae, and oviduct. Those are just from the other side. So if here we take a look at a mid-sagittal view of the uterus, okay, we notice some different layers, and there are 3 layers to the uterus. There's a superficial layer, intermediate, and deep layer. So now those aren't the technical names, but that gives you an idea of the orientation. So the most superficial layer is known as the perimetrium. And that's another thing that you can kind of clue in on whenever you see or hear. Remember, metrium, it refers to uterus. So perimetrium is around the uterus. Myometrium is this layer that's in the middle that's made of smooth muscle. Okay? So that's the muscular layer of the uterus and also the thickest layer. And then you have the endometrium. So this is inside the uterus. And we'll talk about it in lecture, but technically it's made up of 2 layers, a functional and a basal layer. The functional layer is technically the deepest layer, but the endometrium itself of those 3 is the deepest. And this would be the basal, and that would be the functional.
So is that the whole endometrium the pink and the black together?
Yep.
And what's that white one then?
Here?
Yeah.
That's the perimetrium.
So it's not the covering.
Technically, yes, it's this attached to that as well.
Okay. So they're both.
Yeah. They're both part of the perimetrium. You're welcome. If we look here, okay, the uterus projects down into this opening, this tube. Well, this tube is the vaginal, or the vagina, and this is the vaginal canal. And the opening of the uterus projects down into it. So it's kind of like a funnel, like this. This opening right here is known as the cervix. And you have the remainder of the vaginal canal leading to the external orifice, okay, leading into the vaginal canal here. And then you have the external genitalia. So the external genitalia consists of labia minora and labia majora. So minora for little, majora for big. So this is a smaller one in size. This is a bigger one in size. Different in tissue types, and again we'll talk about that in lecture. Before I move on to the rest of the external genitalia, the labia minora. Obviously you have 2 of them. In there. So this is also the labia minora, and these are the vestibular glands, okay, that lie in the vestibule. It's kind of the area space between the labia minora and labia majora, and they have a variety of functions: secreting mucus for intercourse, secreting acidic secretions for immune protection, protecting the vaginal orifice. But the labia majora create a covering or a hood over this structure right here, and this is what's known as the clitoris. Okay, and this is analogous to the male reproductive structure, the glans. So when this structure is sufficiently stimulated, it creates a surge of action impulses that generate secretions that really do prepare the female reproductive tract for entry of or transfer of sperm from the male to the female. and it causes the cervix to dilate. It will help neutralize some acidity in the vaginal canal and allow that sperm to be transferred from point A to point B, and point B is all the way up here. This is where it needs to get. Oops, sorry, it's a little out of view, a little focus, but remember the uterine tube? So the sperm has to travel all the way from vaginal canal all the way up into here and then into uterine tube, and hopefully it's at the right time that it can meet with an oocyte and then fuse, and then that's how babies are made. But you knew that already, right? The last part of the external genitalia, that's where I left off. If I can get this on there. This area here, it's a little blurry. This area here, directly anterior to the pubic symphysis. That's what this is, remember? That's the pubic bone, or a part of it. There's the two rami of the pubic bone, and the other one would be on the other side. You see the little blue cartilage right there? That's the pubic symphysis. Well, this area of adipose tissue is known as the mons pubis. It's where pubic hair will grow, and also will grow on the the labia majora. And that does it for the female reproductive system. They need to see anything again? So, kind of the same type of setup. This half will come off. Okay, but we'll go through it in the same fashion that we did for the female reproductive system. So we have gamete generation, gamete. In this case, we have storage, but that's kind of tied with transportation. And then, obviously, there's no developmental or growth happening here in the male reproductive system, so just dealing with the generation and transportation. So with that being said, sperm cells of the gametes in the male reproductive system, they're generated in the testes, and they have left and right testicle, and above, we're kind of hovering over each testicle, is this comma-shaped structure here. This is known as the epididymis. And the epididymis is a storage site for sperm cells. So they're generated from the seminiferous tubules in the testes, and I'll show you what they're supposed to be represented as on the model here in a second. But they're generated from inside of the testes, and then they're stored in the epididymis where they're matured. If we take this off and we look at a mid-sagittal view of a testy, okay, and you see these tiny, they're really, and the model is kind of worn, the paint's kind of chipped off, but they're supposed to be representing coiled tubules, and these coiled tubules, pressing on the button, that's why. These coiled tubules are where the sperm cells are produced inside of them. And then eventually they would be transported to, down there, right? The epididymis. And now we can move on to the aspect of gamete transportation.
Are those coiled tubules called anything?
Yes, they're the seminiferous tubules. So again, I know it says that in your lab manual that you're supposed to find them here, and this is where they're supposed to be. This side's maybe a little better. Paint's a little less worn. Yeah, so in here, these areas, and you see how they're kind of like little pock marks. You're looking at the cross-section of tubes. So if we move on to the structures that transport gametes. So from the epididymis, you have this tubule here. And it literally goes all the way from the epididymis towards the urethra. And this tube is the vas deferens, or otherwise known as the ductus deferens. I like vas deferens because number one, because it's shorter. Easy to remember how to spell 3 letters as opposed to 4 or 5. And another thing, heard of a vasectomy? Vasectomy? A guy gets a vasectomy when he gets older, hopefully. That is the ligation and suturing of this tube. It's nope, not the white part. This right here. That's bone. Right there. And that's generally where they do procedure. I mean, they don't open up the pelvic cavity and do it in here. They can do it here because it's minimally invasive. But yeah, they cut it and seal it. So they block the transport of sperm from here to here. So, but let's look where this tube leads first before we cut it. So look here, and I'll kind of take this off. You can follow it around. Here, here, and here. And then it kind of disappears into this purplishly colored structure right here. Okay, it is a little bit darker. In reality, it's not necessarily purple. This structure right here is the prostate gland. Ladies don't have that. Okay, only found in males. Okay, and then this structure right here, it looks like a little like a pecan, kind of bent. Okay, this is the seminal vesicle. So the seminal vesicle and the prostate gland. Both of these have important roles in fluid or secretions that facilitate the transport of sperm and into the female reproductive tract and to the development of semen. So now let's look at a mid-sagittal view. I'll kind of show you where we left off. So here you had the vas deferens, okay, going into the prostate gland, and then the tube that would literally connect the urethra and the seminal vesicle is that little guy right there. Okay, it's known as the ejaculatory duct. So I'll move out of the way and show you here. Right there, that's the ejaculatory duct. So the secretions from the seminal vesicle and the prostate gland would drain into the ejaculatory duct along with the sperm cells carried from the vas deferens, and that would enter into the urethra and out the tip of the penis. So we're almost done. A couple of other structures. So the main structure of the external male genitalia is obviously the penis, and the penis has 2 types of tissue in it. It has this, it's lightly colored blue. This is the corpus cavernosum. So corpus cavernosum, and then the rest of this, you see here, actually surrounds the urethra, as is indicated by this tract going all the way through. So this is the corpus spongiosum. So those are the 2 different types of tissue in the penis: corpus cavernosum here, and the corpus spongiosum. This all is corpus spongiosum. It's not here and here, but this is all corpus spongiosum, and the urethra is a tube that runs through the corpus spongiosum. That. Here. Okay, and then we talked about that analog to the female clitoris. It's right here in males, obviously much larger. This is the glans. Technically glans penis, and just to indicate what reproductive system you're indicating, because on the female reproductive system, it's the glans clitoris. So it's glans penis, or just the glans is fine. Okay, and the glans is covered by, get it on there, foreskin. Okay, foreskin that here on this model, it remains intact. Typically, parents opt to have this removed or circumcised at birth or shortly after. Okay, but that is foreskin, and your lamina, it's the prepuce, P-R-E-P-U-C-E. Okay, same thing.
But why is there we have two follicles covered nostrils? We have two of them, then follicles covered nostrils, and then like two. Yeah.
Not understanding what you mean. I mean, there's only one corpus cavernosum.
There's a number two next to it.
Oh, maybe that's the number on the model. I don't know. Like I said, don't be number hunters, because the number might not even be there. It maybe was at one point in time. I'm guessing there, but whether or not